Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, both here and online. Our next session, Glocalization, an innovative approach to achieve the SDGs, examines how rural regions can integrate local resources into sustainable development strategies, shifting away from traditional urban-centric policies. Please join me today in welcoming moderator Eunice Youngkyung Kim, community partner of Korea in She Loves Tech, who will introduce the panelists for this session.
Welcome to the session. Under the overarching theme of bridging divides for a sustainable future, we're going to discuss in this particular session glocalization. And you may have heard the expression regional extinction or extinction of regional communities. It's not just about a matter of any particular community, but regional concerns over regional extinctions are very much concerned with overall national economic development and the future of a country. We need to make sure that regional provinces are self-reliant and independent and prosper. So we're going to talk about that. Now, let me introduce our panel members, and each panel member will provide further introduction to themselves as well as the organizations they work for. First of all, to my left, we have Yonsei Kim. He is working at UFNA, the World Federation of UN Associations, and he is the Chief Regional Coordinator for Asia Pacific. He is involved in promoting cooperation and coordination among countries in Asia Pacific to build global partnerships for SDGs. And next to him is Ho-Gyu Kim, and he is the CEO of Swallows, which is an incubator, accelerator, and he's sponsoring and supporting remote work and entrepreneurship in regional communities. And my far left is Professor Hwa-Jun Choi at Aju University. He's in charge of venture startup and ecosystem, entrepreneurship ecosystem. He's a researcher on this topic. Last year, he visited many non-metropolitan universities to understand their situations, and he conducted research to come up with recommendations to revitalize these regions. I am a moderator. I am a finance specialist. I graduated from Yonsei University. I entered university in 1992. I majored in German literature and language, and I did my master's, and I am currently in a PhD program. I hope that this semester will be the last semester, hopefully. And I did my master's in business administration, and I've been in the financial sector. Currently, I am leading a large global accelerator called She Loves Tech, and I'm a community partner in Korea. I've been working as analyst in international financial organizations, and I was in charge of analyzing listed companies, and later I went into the venture capital sector, and I was involved in venture capital investment. Now I'm going to invite Mr. Yonsei Kim, and please explain what you do and what your organization is for. Thank you. As was introduced, I am Yonsei Kim. Currently, I am working for the WFUNA, the World Federation of United Nations Associations. I am a Chief Regional Coordinator for Asia Pacific. I am honored to be invited to this forum. Since 2017, GEEF has been serving as a forum to enhance awareness on the SDGs by inviting experts and leaders from around the world to engage in discussions on SDG implementation. So I'm honored to be part of the forum. I have a unique background. As I said, I am working for UN. I'm working on sustainability issues, but I studied political science, and at the Air Force, I worked as a lecturer on political landscape and security, and we need all these things to continue to prosper, but at the same time, the reality is pretty harsh. I know that the reality is harsh, but I'm also an idealist. I have optimism, and I try to remain a romantist. I try to maintain a good balance between life and work, and I turned 40 last year. And since last year, I felt like I had this sense of urgency given the global geopolitical situations and the climate change. I began to worry that my next generation could be the last generation of humanity. I'm teaching students at Hanyang University, and students say, well, I was born into this world and I've been doing my best, doing what I was told to do, but then I don't really get to enjoy opportunities as much as my prior generations. And whenever I hear these remarks from young students, I feel really sorry and concerned. For the past 80 years, the World Federation of United Nations Associations has been supporting the agenda of the UN. It is a nonprofit organization. In the 1940s and 50s, WFUNA focused on human rights and peace and security, and now we're focusing on sustainability. Now, in the history of the UN, today seems to be the most challenging period. However, the UN went through the Cold War, and at that time, the UN didn't really have much influence. But now, compared to together with Picasso and Andy Warhol, back then, we were able to utilize art to instill the sense of détente. And so in connection with sustainability, our organization is thinking about and carrying out various activities. So when it comes to glocalization, it's not just about central government giving money to regional communities, but the regional glocalization is about translating global agenda into local action. And so based on my experience, I like to say that we can connect between global and local. And I hope to be able to deliver you a meaningful message. Recently, I read a book where the leader of India, Tagore, said that just because there's wind doesn't mean that you can sail across the ocean. Well, I hope that you will put your feet into the ocean and slowly learn how to sail so that you can sail out to the open waters. Thank you. Thank you. It's my turn. My name is Ho-Kyu Kim. I am leading an accelerator, Swallows. I started this business last year, and in Gangneung, Jumunjin, I'm also running a shared office. I live near the ocean, and I like to tell you a story. For many years, I worked at an IT company. Back in 1999 and 2000, when there was a dot-com bubble, I was a college student, and even then, I was working at the IT company, so more than 20 years at Naver and Kakao and Line. I worked at many different large IT companies, and I had to travel a lot. For instance, I would leave early in Gimpo Airport, arrive in Japan and Tokyo office, and then I would come back home that night. So my schedules were really packed, and I had to do a lot of traveling, and I had to do overwork. So I got sick, and I was able to recover my mental health through a lot of meditation and other effort. And I had my 9 teeth removed, and so there's implants. Compared to my age, I had a lot of health issues when I was working at IT companies. So I realized that, okay, working for these big, large companies is good, but then I wanted to go to a remote province to enjoy my life wholly. And Gangneung is a province where they have good services and convenient services, but there's one infrastructure that's lacking, which was the incubation. Well, many startups and entrepreneurs were growing, but then they would come to Gangneung, but they cannot work in cafes all day. And I realized that there was a lack of shared office space, and that is why I started this business as well. Because in other provinces and regions, there weren't many places for shared office spaces. So I started doing that, and I also wanted to serve as an accelerator for local entrepreneurs. So that is why I started Swallows. Now, because I live away from the capital area, I thought that I would be able to stay there, but then I ended up traveling to Seoul. So 2-3 days I stay in Seoul, and for the rest of the week I would stay in Gangneung, and I support local entrepreneurs to start their business and continue to grow them. Thank you. Hello. My name is Hwa-jun Choi. I was introduced as an adjunct professor at the Yonsei University, but I am actually I'm doing research on startup ecosystem at Asan Sharing Foundation. And last year and the year before, I conducted research on entrepreneurship centers of non-capital area universities. So I don't know how much you know, but Korea is divided. The Korean peninsula is divided. But within South Korea, there's a division between the metropolitan area and the non-metropolitan area. And you may not know very well, but in the non-metropolitan areas, when you move away from Seoul, there's a lot of lacking. I am studying startup ecosystem, and I'm interested in creating an environment where foreigners can come and start business here in Korea. And in the past, there was competition between nations, but there's competition between cities and local communities. And so such competition has become very important. In Japan, under a city, for instance, in Tokyo, there is a Shibuya district, and they have their own startup ecosystem. So I'm going to talk about that as well. I am associated with a university, and my research is basically on university startup ecosystem. I'm going to talk about that in terms of non-metropolitan universities. Thank you. Thank you. We were able to learn more about these panel members, which makes me excited. The title of the session is Glocalization, Innovative Approach to Achieve SDGs. So we can think about the definition of glocalization and why we need glocalization as an approach and how is it related to achieving SDGs. And each panel member, before we listen to individual presentation, I'd like to talk about this first. Glocalization is a term proposed by Roland Robertson in the 1990s in the UK. It's a combination of globalization and localization. And it means that globalization and localization do not conflict with each other, but they can complement each other. So when this term was first coined, multinational corporations in maintaining global standards, trying to localize their products and services. So glocalization was used as a strategy for multinational companies, but now glocalization is utilized by international organizations. So it's not just about business strategy, but it is an approach we can take for sustainability. And so before each panel presentation, I'd like to discuss why glocalization is an approach, effective approach in addressing the concerns over regional extinction. First of all, we have a panel member who lives outside of Seoul, and we had meetings prior to this panel member. And now I am going to just call you by your first name, Ho-gyun. In your view, why do you think we need glocalization as an approach?
Well, first of all, one of There are some frequent problems that I run into since I moved to the Gangwon province. We often talk about balanced regional development, and the public sector supports this purpose. So, for example, urban rehabilitation project as well, and the budget is usually 20 or 30 billion in Korean won. There's also commercial district revitalization project as well. The budget size is about 10 billion in Korean won. So these kind of redevelopment projects can be won by local government, and so this is the kind of effort the local governments are making to revitalize the local area outside Seoul. But are these producing good result? So, for example, investment is focused on infrastructure. So if you do urban regeneration project, for example, then you build gas pipeline or you build a parking lot. So basically you build some infrastructure. So if you are not living inside an apartment building, there's some basic infrastructure needs. And those for those infrastructure needs, there's some investment going on. But the problem is when the local government, once the local government receives the budget and carries on these projects, is it really it needs to translate into actual benefit to be enjoyed by the local residents, and that kind of doesn't happen often. And the budget execution, it ends up being just a one-time exercise. So sometimes people need to think about the real outcome of infrastructure investment. So that's one feedback that I get from the local residents. So when we think about developing regions outside Seoul, we need to look at beyond hardware development. Yes, so not just the hardware development, but content, local contents need to be developed as well to have a more balanced regional development. So we need a more balanced investment. What about you, Yongjae? What is your take on this? So, as just mentioned by our colleague from UN, glocalization is adopted at UN as well. As many of you are familiar, in 2016 up to 2030, so we are pursuing Agenda 2030, so 17 SDGs. But we have 169 specific goals, and we are doing some survey about how we are doing in terms of achieving them. Now the question is, can we achieve them during the remaining 5 years? So out of 169 goals, how much have been achieved? So far, the achievement rate is about 16%. 10 years have passed, but only 16% of achievement. This is a really low number.
있었지만 그럼에도 불구하고 굉장히 더디.
Nevertheless, this is a really slow progress. Even we consider some circumstances, so we really need to do something very innovative, or maybe we need to just put in more money. 133 trillion US dollars is required to achieve 100% of the goal. So that was the initial estimation. But if you multiply that by the current Korean currency rate, 1,421, then the number is just really astronomical. So it's not possible to make that kind of financial investment. So UN summit last year, Secretary General Guterres, he adopted the Pact for Future, and he talked about glocalization. So glocalization is going to be a topic going forward as well. So UN member countries, they need to take an interest in their own problems. They need to try to solve their problems, and glocalization can be a good approach. So glocalization is an important topic even at the UN stage and in Korea as well, last year and this year, at universities as well. They selected local universities, and they set aside a budget, and also there is a RISE program or RISE project. So there used to be some research grant from research institute, but now local governments provide a research fund to the universities as well. So local governments and are working hard to adopt a globalization approach. So globalization, global collaboration, and collaboration with the UN as well, pursued by the local governments. So in that way, globalization is really here. And also, out of the 169 SDGs, number 9 and 6 and 11 and 10 and all these 5 kind of goals, if you look at the specific goals in there, it's very much can be very much dealt with by glocalization. So we can see good application of glocalization in achieving SDGs. Thank you very much for your comment. So SDG 8 is about quality work, and 9, reducing economic uncertainty, and then 10 is about urbanization. So those SDGs we target, and goal 10, reducing inequality and responding to climate change, they can also go together with revitalizing local areas. So we heard from Yonsei and Hogyu. In terms of the ecosystem for startups and researchers, so Hwa-jun, what is your take on this as a researcher working on startup ecosystem? So I don't know if this is familiar to students at Yonsei, but we assume to get a job inside Seoul. But actually, universities outside of Seoul, students there, they also want to get a job inside Seoul. Outside of Seoul, population is declining, population is aging very fast, and job opportunities are limited. So education has an important goal. One of the goals of educating people is how to help these students get settled in the local area. So this is not a topic necessarily thought about by universities in Seoul area, but in local areas outside Seoul, universities need to think about how to help their graduate get settled in their local area. And Chungcheongdo area, and except for some certain provinces, there are not many exemplary Korean companies operating outside Seoul. So what about Busan? Busan is a major city in Korea. Do you know its recent nickname? Yes. The recent nickname for Busan is Old Man and Sea. So it goes to show the lack of corporate presence in Busan, even though Busan is the second largest city. So Busan has that kind of threat. And another issue is there are many overseas students in local universities, particularly for master's degree and PhD degree programs. And local universities, they want these foreign students to get settled in their area as well. So if you have a master's program or doctor's program outside of Seoul, they have some sort of extra benefit or incentive to get settled in the local area. So in terms of the glocalization, so this is not just about simply providing education. We also need to think about how to respond to the population decline and how to help the graduates to get settled in the local area as well. Thank you very much for your takes on glocalization. So when we think about this topic or the topic of declining local cities, we often think about closing the gap between the urban and the rural area. But this is a very abstract idea. And the decline of the local cities, this topic receives a lot of attention from the government, and government is making many efforts. But if you look at the detailed contents of those efforts, it's still very abstract. So again, to sum it up, glocalization, we can take the pros of globalization, but we can also take the glocalization approach to revitalize local area. And also, these should provide better living conditions to the local residents, and they should contribute to the local development. But given that, well, it has been a really long introductory remarks about glocalization, so we understand the importance of glocalization approach. So each of you in your each area, what kind of glocalization strategy can be adopted by the local governments in their local context? So, and Hogyun, I'm sorry for calling you out often, but because you live outside Seoul, and you have a lot of experiences about the local startup ecosystem. So let me ask you this question. So you are leading Swallows and working Stay as well. You are doing various experiments in that regard to build a successful startup ecosystem. What is the key ingredient? Well, to be honest, I wanted to retire. I wanted to retire, to be honest. But my background is in IT and platform business and accelerating and incubating. But I want to do something else. And AI is now very popular, but some jobs cannot be replaced by AI. So for example, I enjoy surfing and camping and diving on weekends, and this kind of leisure area, leisure and sports activities and eating business, restaurant businesses. So I wanted to go into these kind of businesses. But once I moved to my local area, I couldn't start that right away because I wasn't ready. And also I wanted to experience some available jobs in local setting. So I looked for some jobs, but one of the major problems is that outside Seoul, many employers, they cannot guarantee the legal minimum wage. That is just their reality. And sometimes in certain provinces, this is a really big problem. And also, one of the main reasons why young people are leaving the local area to Seoul, particularly for women, they're moving to Seoul because they're a local guy friends. They are not earning enough to be husband material, so they're moving to Seoul. So the working conditions tend to be poor compared to Seoul. And so if you don't come from a wealthy background and if you cannot find a well-paying job in local community, then you tend to move to Seoul. So that is a big problem in local area. And the Gangneung area where I'm living right now, there is a high-speed train connection between Seoul and Gangneung. So a lot of tourists come to Gangneung. So if you are in the business of a restaurant or accommodations for these tourists, then your business is okay. But other than that, other business types are not doing well in Gangneung. So how can we create quality jobs outside Seoul? So that is a big issue. So I want to touch upon that here. So first of all, there is a suburban area. So typically, if you can reach this area within 2 hours from urban area, that destination is called suburban area. So if you take a high-speed train from Seoul, you can get to Gangneung in 90 minutes. And then, so basically, you can commute from Seoul to Gangneung 90 minutes. And if you take, and there's going to be another KTX connection between Gangneung and Busan. So basically, the East Coast area of Seoul, of Korea, can be part of the Seoul metropolitan area. And if you look at the US, starting from the East Coast and as you move towards the West Coast, the culture becomes more casual and more free. So such businesses tend to move towards the West Coast area. In Korea, it's kind of the opposite, interestingly. So as you move towards the East Coastal area in Korea, the atmosphere is more casual and free. So I hope that more businesses will move to the East Coast area. There was such movement prior to the COVID situation, but after the COVID situation, that movement stopped. And another issue is welfare. And oftentimes we think of an issue as a welfare issue, but sometimes it's more of an efficiency issue. So for example, I once had an opportunity to ask a question to Chairman Choi-tae-won of SK Group, and I asked him what is their approach to this kind of problem. And his answer was, this is a management issue. So for example, we need to allocate the right types of work to the right types of people. And then we need to combine the work product to produce good result. So if you want to do that well, we need to have a really sophisticated way of managing overall workload. which is not easy to have. So, for example, we often talk about, oh, let's have a meal together, let's have a working lunch together. We tend to say that because sometimes we want to have in-person communication. So remote working in Korea is not really easy. Now, there used to be a bit of remote working during the COVID pandemic situation, but now remote working is getting less popular. People are going back to office. And there's a good example here. And Line company, Korean company Line, here they still maintain work from home practice as well. They hired one developer in Daegu area. This developer comes to Seoul only for team dinner. But he stays Daegu for most of his work that is done remotely. And also in Line area, in Line company, there's some people who work from East Coast area. So I can see that remote work can be a way to hire people locally who can still get a job in Seoul metropolitan area. So in the longer term perspective, I think this could be a good approach.
제 얘기가 너무 길어.
Maybe I spoke too much, so I'd like to wrap up here. Well, these are so interesting. In my case, when we think about population decline and decline in regional communities, I became interested in this topic because when I was working for an investment bank, I was an analyst analyzing consumer industries and consumer stocks and in construction stocks. So I naturally became interested in population issues. And so that's how my interest started. And about 5-6 years ago, I started to travel and visit different places around the country. And sometimes I would go there for a seminar. And so I visited Gangneung a few times already. And what was interesting, what was surprising was that in the case of Kunsan and Gyeongju and Mokpo, well, they are not as big as Daegu or Gwangju or Busan, but I thought these were big cities. But when you think about Gyeongju or Mokpo, their population is about 200,000. And I don't know if there's anyone from Gyeongju, and don't take it personally, but my experience in Gyeongju was that there are only Gyeongju bread and some snack brands only, and that these are the only kinds of businesses in Gyeongju, which makes me wonder what other business opportunities there are in Gyeongju. And of course, there's Dongguk Hospital and other services, but I felt that there wasn't a lot of industry in Gyeongju. And also in Mokpo, they have some tourism, and they have a lot of massage places. And in Gangneung, there are a lot of coffee shops and cafes. So based on my experiences, I felt like a lot of these local regional cities are lacking a lot. And I read books about Japan, and Japan didn't really have a good idea as well. But what Hogyo mentioned was very interesting because Hwa-jun mentioned about increasing the number of residents in these provinces. And in one way or another, Korea would have to receive more immigrants. And we would also need to attract talented individuals from overseas. But at the same time, as Ho-jun mentioned, Hogyo mentioned, we can build transportation, and because we have this high-speed railway, people would come to Seoul for hospital and medical services. And if we cannot stop people from coming to Seoul, we would have to offer something interesting and something attractive. Now, we talked about how we would attract people from Seoul to other regions. And Yongjae, it's interesting that his parents are doing a very interesting business in Hwaengsong. So you may reflect on your personal experience now from the perspective of the globe. How can we contribute to sustainability by working at the local level? Well, time goes by really quickly. There is a clock right there, so I feel like I have to say something quickly. As she mentioned, about 10 years ago, my parents retired, and my parents decided to move to Gangwon province. And 3 years ago, they started a business. They started traditional liquor brewery. So they are in their 70s, but they steam rice and they use traditional method to produce traditional alcoholic beverages. This may be hard labor, but my parents really enjoy that. And I live in Yongin, and when they drive, it takes 1.5 hours from Hwangsong to Yongin. So they live there in Gangwon province, but when they want to see us, they will drive to visit us. So that is also very easy. So as was mentioned, we need to be able to create quality jobs in other provinces. And also, when you think about housing prices are very low, and they can live in larger apartment units with the same amount of money in local communities. But still, I know that this is not an easy task to do. It's very challenging. Well, in Yongin City and in Suwon City, the city governments want to attract international organizations. And I often make a joke. We can move to Gwangyo. There's subway connection, but then our people, staff members, they don't want to work in Suwon. And so Suwon is not very far from Seoul. It's right there, but still, not a lot of people want to go to work in Suwon. So I know that there's competition among provincial governments and city governments to attract high-tech industries like drones and robotics and battery industries and startups. There's a lot of budget spent on these initiatives, but not all of them are successful, and there's some skepticism about that. So Topohang and Daejeon and Cheonju and Gangneung, there are some good examples and success cases, but these are not strong enough and innovative to transform the entire structure. We need more transformation and more structural change. Otherwise, we won't be able to gather enough momentum for meaningful change. I may not have all the answers, but from the global perspective, what we can refer to as a leverage is a number of global cases. When you think about global, different things may come to your mind. One idea would be, one notion is that this type of gap between the Seoul metropolitan area and the other regions is not just the Korea's problem, but it is prevalent in other countries. Now, regional governments, they collect tax revenue, but tax revenue is not enough. So there should be physical distribution from the central government. But then when you use your local tax revenue, you may not be able to use it effectively, but then there may be some waste of physical budget. So we need to work harder to make sure that budget is used effectively. And global projects can be initiated, and we can get more policy support, and we can produce better outcomes, and these can be understood as key performance. So I wanted to say that. Then are there any successful cases we can refer to? At UFNA, we have a city planners program that we started in 2017. So it's been going on for 8 years. And so this is about nurturing city entrepreneurs. And we build partnerships with local governments. And for innovation and change in these local communities, startups and entrepreneurs propose solutions, and there will be support from international organizations and other stakeholders so that we can accelerate this idea. So this is basically a support program. And by utilizing this type of program, we can multiply the effect of government budget So we can do much more than what the local government can do on its own. And when there is a success case we generate, then we can apply this to Indonesia or Thailand or other countries. So we were able to see how these startups were able to expand globally by having a good reference case in Korea. And we used to support about 20 startups last year, each year, but we have increased that to 40 startups per year, and we will continue to expand our support. So if you're interested, then you can start a business addressing local government problems and become successful. And in June this year, we are going to carry out a conference together with at COTI, so you can come to our organization, and at COEX we will have a conference. Thank you. When we talk about regional decline and population problem, there's something that we need to discuss, which is not an easy topic to discuss: education. Around the world, parents have zeal for education because they believe that education can help their children move up the social ladder. But then in Korea, we have this excessive zeal for education, which is often represented by what's happening in the Taechi area. Now, you did some research on the role of a university in nurturing local startup ecosystem. What can they do? And in terms of education, what can universities do? As we have this type of panel discussion, there's so much we want to cover, but time is running short. So can you be brief, Hajun? I'm not an expert on education per se, so I can't really talk about that, but I can share with you my personal experiences and what I've observed on the ground. Non-metropolitan provinces, they don't like the term local, but non-metropolitan areas, there is this big issue of aging population. It's not only aging population, but aging businesses. Now in Korea, there are many small and medium-sized enterprises, and many of strong medium enterprises have been sold overseas, and these have been recently reported in the media. It is mainly because there's no successor. Second generation, third generation children, there's no children who can inherit this business, and that is why they were sold to overseas companies. These smaller companies should be able to get labor supply from their local areas, but then there's no succession plan because many of these founders have children who go to Seoul and they work there. So they don't want to inherit their parents' business. And you can refer to Japan, which has a similar case. And there is an M&A research institute. I don't know if you know about this. Well, this is a unicorn company with more than 1 billion won of dollars of valuation. And this startup is all about finding successors of small and medium enterprises and family businesses. And the market cap of this company has grown so much because there's such a big demand. And I believe that's going to be the case in Korea. So we need to find a way to identify business people who are willing to take over these medium local businesses. And there was someone else who talked about wasting physical or local budget. And so there are a lot of efforts to improve this. For instance, Yonsei University is a very big university. They are sustainable in terms of their finance, and they can get a lot of funding. And then they have a lot of students. But in non-metropolitan universities, they lack students and they lack research funding, so they promote collaboration and cooperation. For instance, in Busan, there is a Busan University, Gyeongsang National University, and Changwon National University. These national universities in the Busan area collaborate, and when that's not enough, then they pursue partnerships with techno centers and startup centers and the local government, so they try to survive together. And in doing so, universities play a key role because universities have young students, and so they take the lead and they take the initiative, and that's their survival strategy. And we will have to see how this will unfold in the future. Well, I don't think I have a good ending, but that's how much I can say. So these three panel members discussed the glocalization strategies to save local communities from decline. And I have a number of further questions, so let's move on to and switch gears a little bit.
인프라
I want to talk about traffic infrastructure, transportation infrastructure. So as transportation infrastructure improved, inflation spread nationwide. And I used to have relatives in Daegu area. When I was elementary school student, the jjajangmyeon noodle was much cheaper in Daegu. But nowadays, when I travel to Daegu area, the noodle price is the same. So Seoul inflation seems to have spread nationwide. And people in the local area, they prefer to use hospitals, for example, in Seoul, rather than the local hospitals. And they also come to Seoul to enjoy musical performance, for example. So people are worried about the population decline in local areas and the regional decline as well. So maybe improvement in transportation infrastructure is a contributing factor. I'm not saying we should stop improving transportation infrastructure, but how can we promote regional development without coming up with this crazy idea? Maybe I can answer first. So in Daejeon City, I did some study about lifestyle patterns in Daejeon City. There, people spend a lot on transportation cost, because they use the high-speed train KTX to travel to Seoul to enjoy their weekend in Seoul. So when in Daejeon, there's not much performance or arts or musical concert that they can go to. And now with the introduction of KTX, Daejeon people can come to Seoul within 1 hour. So, and also because of the KTX connection, sometimes it is easy to commute between Seoul and the local cities. So, with better transportation, people actually travel more to Seoul. So, this also exacerbates concentration issue in Seoul. And Daejeon, there is a very famous bakery shop, 성심당, and so people say if you want to enjoy fresh air and sea, you need to go to East Coast, and it's very close enough to travel within a couple of hours. So, and 성심당, but so popular, is doing well in Daejeon. So this shows us that if we can develop really good local content, it can be an attraction for Seoul people to travel to local city. So we need to develop these great local content. And we can find a way to efficiently utilize it. For example, I live in Jumunjin. Here, grilled fish is very cheap. But quality is good. So it's still cheaper than in Seoul. So if you kind of discover these great gems in local area and great restaurants, for example, it can be great content to sell the local city. And in Gangneung area, they also have their own famous food and restaurants. So you need to develop these things so that people in Seoul can come here and spend their money here. So maybe we need to do some strategic thinking about this as well. So you mentioned the Michelin, the restaurant star rating system. So earlier I talked about my parents living in Hwaengsong in Gangwon province, and they are running a brewery there. And I just experienced what Hogyu just mentioned. So in our case, for example, my parents' brewery is a new, only 3 years old brewery, and small scale, so run by one elderly couple. But still, many people come to visit brewery because they want to experience it. But my parents, my family never promoted it. But this kind of happened. It turns out that my parents' liquor was part of the Michelin index, and it featured on Instagram. So people learned about my parents' brewery, and they're now visiting my parents' brewery. What is different about my parents' brewery? They use a liquid from a particular types of tree. That was a differentiator in their liquor. And in Hwaengsong, local government as well, they provide some support. So, for example, when people from Seoul come to Hwaengsong and and they follow program designed by Hwaengsong local government. For example, day one, you go to this brewery to enjoy their liquor. Day two, you go to a cattle raising farm. So you get to enjoy feeding the cattle there. So this kind of program, once it is known and becomes popular, more people come to Hwaengsong to enjoy this program. So definitely, discovering and developing local content is a good way to revitalize the local area. And transportation infrastructure is really great. There's a taxis available. Well, if you talk about your family story, maybe it's biased. So if I can share my own experience. So the rice wine, for example, it's a very cheap kind of liquor, but it's very popular and has a high market share. So if so actually, his parents' rice wine is very high price, but still very popular, and so it's a high-end kind of rice wine. But if you compare that to other wine, for example, of a similar price, then your satisfaction goes down. When you drink wine of a certain price, so you have a certain level of satisfaction. So it's not easy to find a satisfying wine of this price range, but his parents' rice wine is a really great contest to revitalize that area. So infrastructure development, we cannot hamper infrastructure development just because we don't want people to travel from local areas to Seoul. So we need to have a really decent job, quality employment opportunities in local areas. So to that end, we need to develop local content. It could be a local performance or concerts. In Yangyang, the city in Gangwon province, is a really famous destination for surfers. So surfing is popular there. So sometimes the local governments, they just hand out money to attract people. But unless you pay me like millions and millions, not many people want to move to local area and live there. So you need to have other than monetary handout to attract people to local cities. So we need to have some outside of box kind of thinking. We are running against the clock, and I hope we had more time for discussion, but I guess I can ask you one more question and then wrap up the discussion. We have 7 minutes left. I cannot believe how fast time flies. And so startup ecosystem and the role of universities, we already touched upon that, and local government's policy and the potential for global collaboration. So let's talk about that. Anyone who wants to volunteer first? I will be brief. So in my case, this morning as well, I had guests from Gyeonggi-do area. So I meet a lot of people. I also travel a lot, Thailand and other countries as well. So I get to meet many local governments from overseas as well. So they all think about how to revitalize their local areas, their provinces, how they can provide good jobs and have more sustainable local communities. So this is a really common problem many governments are dealing with around the world. So cities are also competing against each other. So if we continue to do what we've been doing, it's not going to be easy to make a huge difference. But when we think together and when we share our diverse resources, we can have some solution. For example, universities, local governments, entrepreneurs, investors, and international institutes, they need to meet together. For example, university, they have a young talent and educational curriculum, and local governments, they have a budget, and entrepreneurs, they have technology, they have the operational system, and if we add funding to that, a lot can be done. But things are not happening because everyone is in silo. They just spend money on exploring ideas, and that's it. So we need to have more opportunities to meet with one another. That way, we can find more ideas to collaborate together globally. And in that sense, I believe this panel is a really great opportunity for me to meet with the moderator and fellow panelists as well. So many people here are aspiring to global career, global jobs, but you have great ideas. I believe you have great ideas, and you can do a lot with your ideas. So explore a lot, explore ideas, and then at the end of that journey, we will find more collaboration ideas. Thank you. It was a really great comment. And Hwajun mentioned earlier, Hwajun talked about the residential population. I'm really interested in this topic. And I can talk about that topic all day. And I can talk about education and demographic structure all day. And if we want to have that residential population, we need to have some support from the government. For example, visa issue needs to be solved. So I'm talking about foreigners who come to live in local cities in Korea, but not just foreigners, but Korean people as well. So what kind of policy support do we need to have a residential population? So residential population here means outsiders coming to local city and settle there. So we are dealing with declining fertility rate in Korea. So to have population replacement, we need to have outsiders coming in. So one way is to adopt immigrants. A great city example is Berlin. About 20% of the Berlin city population is immigrants, and they also adopted a lot of tech talent as part of their immigration program. Berlin is one of the major cities in Europe, but compared to other German cities like Munich or Frankfurt, Berlin is still small in size. And Berlin was even smaller at the time of German unification. But Berlin City, they were proactive in bringing in immigrants, particularly a lot of tech talent. And the visa policy supported that. Korean government is making efforts, for example, startup visa and nomad visa as well. So again, this is an early stage. And second, the concept of residence. We need to have a new understanding about that. Good example is Bali in Indonesia. Bali is known for vacation destination, but a lot of startup entrepreneurs, they go to Bali, just like local Korean entrepreneurs come to Gangneung or Yangyang. So if you go to Bali, there is a lot of co-working space, for example, like WeWork, and many SMEs business people are working and living in Bali, and Majorca island in Spain is another example. So they have a program, for example, 1-month program where overseas entrepreneurs can come in and live there and work there for about 1 month. So these outsiders can come into the local city, enjoy the city, and do economic activities there. So in this way, we can approach the local city revitalization problem. Yes, so residential population is really important, and the number of residents is important. And actually, local government officers are sensitive to this issue because depending on the number of residents that they can attract to their local city, their job depends on it. So it's a great idea to attract outsiders to the local cities. And also, I want to talk about the concept of a relational population or living population. So these relational or living population, these people do not necessarily reside in the local city, but they have some sort of relationship with the local city. So I want to talk about these population as well. So by increasing the number of the relational population, for example, tourists, more tourists, then they can also have a positive impact on the local government. Just like the residential population. So in the longer term, maybe if we can have a bigger relational population, they can be just as good as attracting a lot of residential population. Yes, again, we can talk about this topic all day long, but given the time limit, we need to wrap up the discussion. So let me just summarize some of the main talking points. So today, we had a discussion about glocalization as a strategy to deal with the regional decline. Improvement in transportation infrastructure or local universities' role and entrepreneurs' activities, they all need to be connected together. So in the audience, so since you've been listening to our talk, do you have any questions about glocalization or glocalization approach or regarding the declining population in local areas? Or do you have a question to our panelists? So maybe we can accommodate one question, or otherwise, I guess we can just close the session if there's no question. But do we have a question from the audience? Any burning question in the audience? Please raise your hand if you have a question.
Hello. I am interested in this keyword, glocal. I'm a graduate student here at Yonsei, and I study education, so I am interested in connecting glocal with education. But first, the term glocal. I have some comment to share with you, and I would also like to ask a question to UNFA. So to the panel member from UFNA. I believe that there are two aspects to glocal approach. You may start from global, meaning that global values are implemented at the local level. And the other way is from the local to the global. You may find something unique in your local community and expand it to the global scale. So there is a top-down approach and a bottom-up approach. And in your talks, you mentioned that an international organization has a mandate. So now, glocalization, how is it understood by international organizations in conducting and fulfilling their mandate? Thank you for a great question. When we conduct academic research, as you mentioned, we can examine both ways, the top-down and bottom-up. So these are more of a kind of one way or the other, but that's not the reality in fact, because there is an entity that is leading any initiative. So as you mentioned, in the international community and at international organizations. I cannot explain in simple terms what kind of approach they take, but now, when you think about the UN, they have 193 member countries. So different countries have different cultures and different contexts and different situations. So the UN starts with a recognition that there are such differences. But at the same time, the UN is interested in overcoming these differences and establish a global consensus. So in doing so, we can apply this notion of glocalization. So there's a lot of back and forth between the two. And ultimately, the bottom line is each member country has its own sovereignty. So the individual government or local governments, they are the final decision makers. So I hope that you will examine and consider all these multiple aspects to localization. We are running short on time. Was your question answered? Are you okay? Okay, great. So today, this is a very interesting topic, and there's a lot more that we wanted to share with you. And there were some controversial issues as well. And we had to tone down a little bit on some of these controversial issues. I hope there will be another opportunity. But first, I would like to express my gratitude to the audience for staying with us in this Friday afternoon, and I ask for your continued interest and support. But what matters really is that what we have discussed today will be translated into actions, however small they are. So my final remark is I like to emphasize the importance of the theme bridging the divides for a sustainable future, and I hope we will all stay hopeful that we can make positive change. Thank you very much for your participation. Hope to be able to see you again in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I actually have a lot of questions regarding this. I was actually wondering what the priority of these different policies would be, but we can talk about this offline. Thank you very much for the wonderful session. Again, it could be controversial, but I think it's a very important topic that we need to touch, especially in Korea nowadays. Thank you very much once again. So our next session will begin at 5 o'clock, 17 o'clock. So that would be somewhere around 13 minutes from now. So if everyone can join at 5 o'clock, we'll see you then. Thank you very much.